You probably know that song. Can you sing along with it? I bet you didn't know that it came from the American Revolution around the time of George Washington. Well, this chapter is Lesson 7 of Knowledge 10. It's called, Will This War Never End? So, what I want you to do here is you should be able to describe the things that George Washington did, and there's a word, confident, that you're going to know. Okay, let's get right to it. By the spring of 1778, General Washington and his Continental Army at Valley Forge were in much better spirits. Soldiers and supplies had arrived from France, the army was better prepared, and the bitterly cold weather was behind them. They were ready to take on the British once more. Fighting continued across all the colonies on land and on sea and into the wilderness west of the Mississippi River. Will this war never end? People wondered. Is it worth the loss of so many lives? The war was shifting south now, and the British, under the command of General Cornwallis, felt confident that they could defeat the colonial militia at long last. Now here, confident means certain, means you're sure of something, to be confident. Why do you think the British felt so confident, so sure that they could win the war? Well, indeed, the British won quite a few battles in the South. Little did they know that their successes were about to end. In 1781, 6 long years after the first shot of the war was fired in Lexington, Massachusetts, that's like a war that goes on your entire life. Things began to look promising for the Continental Army. George Washington received news that 28 French ships were on their way to the coast of Yorktown, Virginia, where General Cornwallis and the Redcoats were camped. He was very excited. George Washington came up with a plan to trap the British. General Washington's troops, now camped in New York, marched all day and often through the night to Yorktown, Virginia, a town built on the banks of the York River just a little inland from the Atlantic Ocean. Now, while Washington moved his troops over land, French ships moved in by sea. The British couldn't escape by land because the Continental Army was blocking them. And they couldn't escape by sea because the French ships were blocking them there. George Washington and his forces had the British blocked from both sides. British drummer boys waved a white flag to show that they were surrendering or giving up, and bands are rumored to have played a tune called The World Turned Upside Down. It must surely have seemed like an upside-down world to the British, who were used to winning wars and ruling colonies. Now they had lost a war. They would no longer rule over the American colonies. The British Army was captured at Yorktown, and all the fighting in the colonies ended soon. The British sailed home, and George Washington stepped down as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. His job done. Now, the colonists and the British had to agree to peace, that is, no more fighting. So, representatives from both sides met in France to work out an agreement. And it took 2 years of meetings in Paris, France, to plan for peace. In 1783, Benjamin Franklin, remember him, was there to sign the peace agreement that gave the American colonies their independence. They were finally free of British rule. They would no longer have to pay taxes to the British king. Their new nation reached from Canada in the north, Florida in the south, to the Mississippi in the west. Now that the British were no longer in charge and the colonists did not have to obey the rules of a distant, faraway king, who would rule the new nation? Some suggested that George Washington be made king. King? He scoffed. We have been fighting to rid ourselves of a king. Our new government must be one where the people rule. But how? Now, George Washington was in his 60s at this point, and he was exhausted by 6 years of battle. He only wanted to go back to his family. He loved Mount Vernon, his home on the Potomac River in Virginia. And what you see here is a picture of his home. Nice house, eh? He dreamed of being able to ride peacefully about his farm, listening to bird song instead of shouting out orders to his men. Washington's wife, Martha, had been a great help to him during the war, bringing food and clothing to his troops during their long, hard winters and even camping out with them in their field tents. She too looked forward to spending time with her husband in the comfort of Mount Vernon. But George Washington was not able to relax in his farm for too long, as you will soon learn. Okay, now, something you can add to the list of things that George Washington did for his country. He won the Revolutionary War. Well, in today's read aloud, you heard, the British felt confident that they could defeat General Washington and his men at long last. Say that word, confident. Confident. Confident means that you're sure or certain about something and having no doubts. Like, I am confident that Tuesday is the day after Monday. There's no doubt in my mind. There are some things that I'm confident about. All birds have wings. I am confident about that. Plants need water and sunlight to grow. I'm confident about that. It will never rain again. I'm not confident about that. It probably will. School is closed today. I'm pretty confident about that. I know that there's almost nobody in that building. Not today. Okay. So that is the word confident. And I'm confident that you learned something about the great George Washington today.